Good morning, invisible friends. Happy Tuesday. Today is July 1st, 2025, and it's about 9:22 a.m. Central Time. And my name is Ronaldo Aguiar Marcano. It's my full name. And I'm located right now at my residence, located at 26714 Valleyside Drive, Katy, Texas, 77494. And this video recording is part of the series Law Enforcement Rapid Fire Tips and part of the campaign I'm advancing to bring Diosdado to justice and bring Diosdado to the US, which is the only way where there could be justice. So today I want to apologize that because I didn't post any updates yesterday. It's because how do I say this? I've learned a long time ago that, I don't know, this is just how my mind works. You have to know your equipment, right? Sometimes it happens to me that I'm thinking about a problem or something, and the idea is not fully formed. And yeah, like I've learned that it's something that I just can't. Doesn't matter if I spend hours concentrated on that; it doesn't work. I just have to let it simmer in a way, right? And then eventually, I can see it. So yeah, so there were a few things that I knew that I wasn't ready to talk about those things because I didn't really fully understand them. So anyhow, I spent the day yesterday doing other things that were important, and after a while, I think I saw it. So today I have a few updates to offer in case anybody ever investigates these things. And I made a kind of a small list of items. So let me go through the list so I don't forget anything. So the first thing, and I sorted this list basically, as always, by potential liability to Diosdado Cabello, which I think is the pressure point in all this, right? Because of the founding of eBay as well, right? eBay and PayPal with that 3% racket, they accumulate a tremendous amount of wealth as well that they channel to this. But I guess if you think of the operational cost of eBay, right, and PayPal, and they have to pay taxes, they have to play by the rules in a way. Although it's a tremendous, immense racket, they have to play by the rules, and therefore some of that money has to channel back to the regular society, right, via taxes and things like that. I guess what I'm trying to say, the more energy they get from that source also is supplying energy to the free world in a way, right? So it's in these kind of things, I think what matters, and I think I mentioned this in the website at some point, what matters is not really the absolute value, it's the delta, right? So in terms of delta, the source of income from Diosdado Cabello is more important because he's not paying any taxes, right? So that amount of energy that is coming from the channel is going 100% to this network and 0% to the free world, right? So that makes the delta bigger. And in my mind, I think more dangerous. So yeah. So this list is sorted in terms of liability to him, right? Of what I think could be potential liability. So the first item I wanted to bring up is that yesterday I encountered a vehicle. I was driving around collecting data, and I encountered a vehicle that is documented in the website. And from more than a year ago, I started posting about this vehicle. This was a vehicle that I think around May, probably May 2024, the driver of that vehicle, he tried to run me off the road. They were harassing me at that point because I was attempting to buy the second house without them interfering. Because I already had made several attempts, and they buy the house, right? That's what they do. If I go see a house, they immediately buy the house the same day, cash, right? So there's no way for me to buy it. So in that opportunity, what I did differently is that I bought the house without seeing it. I didn't even show any interest in the house. I put an offer, all cash. I liquidated my savings, all I had, right, to be able to escape, because I realized that as long as I was in this house, I had no chance. I was surrounded 24/7. So in that occasion, when they saw that I liquidated my savings, they started harassing me because they wanted to know which one was the house. But at this point, imagine they must have known which one was the house, because with this level of surveillance and infiltration and everything in Katy at least, right? But anyhow, I managed to buy the house. But in that occasion, when they were harassing me very harshly, this person, a young man, he must be at least 10 years younger than me. He almost drove me off the road with this SUV. Anyhow, I've been looking for SUV in any way I can using technology, and I've never been able to find it. Yesterday, I found it. So I wanted to mention that. I want to give you the data that I got. I haven't ran any of this through the pipeline because I don't have access to that here. But I'll show you how you can get that data. What I got yesterday, basically. So if you go to the channel, Rapid Fire Tips, YouTube, and click on this link that says more links, 13 more links, go to the bottom, right? There is a link that says Channel Archive, and it's a Google Drive link. If you open that, that's basically all the attachments of things that I've mentioned in this channel. There is a folder here for Diosdado Cabello, not to be confused with the folder for Diosdado Cabello, which is named exactly the same in the full investigative archive, which is posted on spyhell.org. That's a different folder and has more data. This is only the things that I've mentioned that could carry liability to Diosdado Cabello that I've mentioned in this YouTube channel only. But there are a lot of other things, his house and everything, right? In the other archive. So there's two archives at this point, basically. One is the Google Cloud Storage bucket name PayPal Dash Mafia. That's the other. That's where the other archive is, and this other archive. Okay. So in this archive, you go to Diosdado Cabello's folder, and then there's a folder here that says Scotland. It's abbreviated like that. SCTLND. That's the plate of the SUV. It's a Texas vanity plate, and I found it at this house yesterday. So this is the corner intersection where the house is located. Now, this other house that is in this photo is also important. It has super high-end security cameras guarding the property where the SUV was found. The whole purpose of this house is to protect that house. So that house must be very important. And the person or people that frequent that house or used to frequent that house must be very important as well. Because it felt like this property that I have here in this picture, and the address of this property is on the other street, right? But the address of this property ends in 07, which is engineering, right? The whole purpose of this property is to watch the other one. But anyhow, this is the SUV. And I don't know if this can zoom in enough for you to see it, but you can see the plate there. And you can download the full resolution picture from the archive. And so, yeah, so that's where it was found. And according to the records, that house is 26922 Harmony Shores Drive, Katy, Texas 77494. And I saw that I downloaded the records, the tax records, and it's been the same owner for the last 8 years at least. So I have the records from 2018 to 2025, and the owner hasn't changed in all those years. And supposedly the name of the owner of that house where that SUV was parked is Neil Alexander Sinclair. So that's that. And mentioning this, not because of vendetta, because he tried to kill me, but if he can be connected to Diosdado Cabello, then it would mean that Diosdado Cabello tried to kill me with that SUV in 2024. And that was more than a year ago. So imagine what he has done over the last year. So that's that. The second thing is another property. This I'm not going to give much information because I don't want to give anything away. But it's a property at 26714 Valley Terrace Drive, Fulshire, Texas 77441. And I went there yesterday. It's so important that I went there last night to record the plates of the vehicles. And they're already posted on YouTube. And I created a kind of a playlist with the name of this property, with the address of this property. All right. So now let's talk about other things, right? So yesterday, a lot of interesting things happened yesterday. So one of the things that happened was that because of the thing on Friday with the mediation, the last video I posted, right? How do I say this? But it felt to me like probably my former partner could have been going through a difficult time, right? Putting myself in her shoes, right? Regardless of whatever happened, I imagine it could be a difficult situation, right? So anyhow, I reached out to her to talk to her and see if I could do anything to make her not that stressed, to try to minimize the impact on her as a person. So I went there and we talked for a while, right? And then a few interesting things happened. And I'm going to mention them here. I'm going to try not to pass judgment, or because not judgment, but I'm going to try not to turn this into an accusation against anybody, because really, I don't know if this is something that could even be provable. Like, I don't know. You're gonna see what I mean. So what happened was this. I got there, right? So we started talking, and she was very emotional at the beginning, but then she relaxed a little bit. We were talking next to my car, to the cold mobile. Like, we were next to the car. And this is gonna be relevant in a second. But anyhow, we started talking, right? And she was joking. So she told me a joke that she heard on Friday from the mediator and her attorney, Morgan Hibner. So the joke was, they were talking and they were joking about me not having an attorney. And apparently the joke was that I do not need an attorney. Like the mediator, Mr. David Perwin, I think is the last name. I may be getting the name wrong. Let me double check. Yeah, David Perwin, Perwin. That's the name. So anyhow, so the joke was that I do not need an attorney. And so she was saying that Mr. Perwin came back after he talked to me, came back to the meeting, and he was super impressed, and by me, or I don't know, by my legal maneuvering. And he said something like I was smart and I didn't need an attorney, and they joked about it. And my former partner said, yeah, he's smart. But the way she said it sounded like she said it as a warning more than as a joke. But anyhow, she said that. When she said that, I said, we were talking in Spanish, so I'll have to translate it, and maybe the translation doesn't work very well in English. But what I said was, in response to that, I jokingly said, I got you with the note, didn't I? That's how I would translate it. I gotcha with the note. And she, like, her eyes went blank. What note? And I said, the note, the request for the note. And she was like, what are you talking about? What note? At this moment, again, I'm trying very hard not to accuse anybody, but she is the petitioner, right? We go to a mediation ordered by a judge. In the mediation, I talked to the mediator, and my only request, I didn't request anything else, only that she sent me a handwritten note stating that she has no reasons to believe that I could be impeded from entering into a contract. I wasn't even asking to judge my mental capacity. I was just asking to state that she thought that I was sane enough to sign a contract. Simple. That was the only thing I asked the mediator to relate to the other party. And when I talked to her yesterday, she didn't seem to know what note I was talking about. So again, I'm trying very hard not to accuse anybody, but I'm trying to think, right? What possible situations could explain that she doesn't know what note I'm talking about? And I asked her this question like 5 times. And the reason why I say that it's relevant that we were next to the car is because I think one of the cameras was on, and it's possible, I haven't checked the footage to be honest, but it's possible that the conversation is there with her yesterday, right? In which she's telling me that she doesn't know what note I'm talking about. So anyhow, I asked this question like 5 times. I'm not exaggerating, but are you sure you don't know what note I'm talking about? No. And then I rephrased the question. I asked her, okay, so tell me, after the mediator talked to me, what happened next? And she explained that the mediator came into the meeting room with her and her attorney, and the mediator explained that there was nothing that could be done because the issue of the mental capacity had to be addressed first. But he didn't give the request about the note to her. He brought information to her, a decision, basically. He brought a series of next steps. Okay. So what I'm getting from this is that the mediator did not rely my request to the petitioner. And again, remember, this is a mediator that was a judge who was appointed by Governor Greg Abbott to the bench to serve as a judge. And it's the same person that is now mediating in this case. And I reported Governor Abbott to the IRS. And I filed that IRS form into the exhibit list with this specific court. Okay. So of course, this is very concerning to me I have to wonder, and again, I'm trying hard, very hard not to make any accusations, but I have to wonder whether the mediator stepped over the boundary from mediating and actually made the decision himself without relaying my message or my request to the other party. I don't know if that's what happened. And this is what I say, I don't know if this is a rule because I don't know. For example, I don't know the conversations that happened there. I'm just seeing what my former partner is telling me. And again, this might be recorded on the video. And I don't know if she had a conversation with her lawyer and that conversation could be protected by the privilege that she has to communicate with her lawyer. So maybe even if she is questioned, I don't know. If the lawyer is questioned, for example, can she say, no, I can't tell you because this is protect? I don't know. I don't want to say anything that is not provable, right? So that's why I'm very cautious. But it seemed to me like it could be a very grave thing. Because if that's what happened, it would mean that Diosdado Cabello is making the decision on whether to accept the request or not. And that would prove he has the child kidnapped, right? Using legal means, but it's kidnapping, right? There's legal kidnapping. This is the thing. It's not a crazy idea. Like this has happened before to other people. So I don't know. I don't really know what to do with that. But it felt to me very wrong. And then, okay, so let's that put aside for a second, right? And then, so I asked her, okay, so what happened? So after I asked her 7 times this question, right? I asked in different forms, what did he say? In any of the recollections or answers she gave me, she ever mentioned anything about my request or a note or a request for anything, right? So of course she was getting anxious. I could see it in her face, like she realized because I was asking so insistently, I was interrogating her at that point. So she realized that she had made a mistake, right? And she wanted to know what was the note that I was talking about. So I told her what really happened. And then she did this thing. Well, I think she tried to fix it, right? She said something like, oh, I heard something about a request, but my lawyer told me to say no because it would look like I had made up the accusations about insanity. That's what she said. And again, this might be recorded in video. And again, I think this also, not a lawyer, but this felt to me like a huge overstep over the attorney-client relationship line. From what I understand, the lawyer's role is to give you advice, not to tell you. Like the lawyer basically made the decision for her, telling her to say no. So the second red flag, right? It seems like the lawyer also is making the decisions for the client. So it's the mediator making the decision and the lawyer making the decision. She did not make the decision, any of those decisions. She didn't even know that I was open to negotiate. From what I gathered yesterday, she thought that I said I won't negotiate. That's the way it looked to her, that I want to go to court, which is not what I said. And again, this is what I said is recorded, and I published it on YouTube. The video recording and the full transcript of the conversation with the mediator is published. It's public, like it's on YouTube. You can listen to what I said to the mediator. So how is it possible that she got a completely different message? And now I understand why they keep the 2 parties in 2 different rooms. Of course, it makes sense. So they can control the message, right? They can twist, and because the mediation is confidential and it's done via Zoom, which they own, the network owns Zoom, right? So they're comfortable that those recordings are not going to go anywhere, right? So they keep the people in 2 different rooms so they can twist the message if they want. And the other party, because they're in this conflict, they will never know what the other party, they're not in amicable terms, right? But that's what failed in this case. I don't hate her. In fact, I went there to try to comfort her because I thought that she would be in pain, right? Emotionally. So that design failed because of that, right? If I really hated her because, what happened with Marcelo and all that, this would not have happened. But because I really don't take it personally, I went there to try to help her in a way, right? And then this conversation came off next to the camera, right? It's like they say in Spanish, we have a saying that it translates loosely like to something like, when it's your time, it's your time. There's nothing you can do. Anyhow, so that's the second thing that happened, that the lawyer told her to say no. Apparently, that's what she said that in the when we were talking yesterday, right? So either she was trying to fix the mistake and didn't fix it very well, right? But what she said would, I think, would probably be a crime, right? If the lawyer instructs the client to do this because of her own interest. And I say her own interest because I reported the lawyer to the IRS, and she's in the IRS form that is filed with the court. Let me show you. So if you go to form 211.org, I'm gonna cut the empty spaces here so the video doesn't have these awkward pauses. But I'll show you. The lawyer is reported to the IRS, and I filed this in the exhibit. So the lawyer is now part of the case itself. And that brings me to another question. Can I ask that lawyer to recuse herself? So in this form, there is a cluster specifically for people that directly participated in the kidnapping of my son in one way or another, right? Yeah, here it is. So I named the cluster MK, Marcelo Kidnappers. And she's MK4. She's there. And the law firm as well, Adam's law firm. So I guess, one question that I have to think about, I have to research this, if legally I can file a motion with the court to appoint or to order that another law firm advises my former partner, because this touches my interests. These lawyers are going to advise her in the best case scenario. They're going to advise her in a way that is biased. And in the worst case, they might manipulate the information or even make the decisions for her in a way that benefits them, which is what I think happened on Friday. And not because I'm guessing, but because she told me that the information never got to her. My request, which was the only thing I asked the mediator to tell her, he didn't tell her. So I don't know. It feels like it's a rigged game, which I'm used to. I'm used to this, but I'm just trying to think what is the fastest way to because I have like maybe 10 different ways I could disarm this. But I just don't know which is the most efficient, right? Like you just want to resolve this quickly. I want to get my son back. I don't want this to drag for another 6 months. So I don't know. I don't know if I should file a complaint with the bar against both of them. I don't know if I should file a motion to the court to remove them from the case. I don't know if I should file a civil lawsuit against them personally. I don't know. Anyhow, so that's what happened. Another thing I want to note is that I filed those exhibits that I filed. So basically what I did, what I said on Friday, what happened is a nuclear weapon, which is also another interesting point, right? I was reflecting on this over the weekend. And here you can see the flow in this design, right? Like when I made that request of the handwritten note asking just to state that they thought I was sane enough to enter into a contract. That was all I asked, right? The answer was no. Okay. And yesterday I saw that this didn't come from my former partner. It came from them, right? From the people handling the mediation, the lawyer and the mediator at the minimum, right? So I guess the thought was, if you think about it, right? What would have been the best thing for the group, for the network? I think, right? Thinking logically, if I was playing this game on their side, I would think that the best thing for the network would have been to say, yes, let's give him the note. Yes, it will open the door to something in the future, because now we cannot say that he's crazy, but that's something that we'll have to deal with anyways, right? Why keep living on the fantasy that we're going to stop all this by trying to declare him crazy, which is a fantasy in itself. But that's not what they did, right? What they did was to say no to giving me the note. And the reason behind that, I believe, is because the people making the decisions are thinking of their own interest, not in the interest of the group. So Diosdado Cabello, when he made that decision on Friday, he made it because he's thinking that if he doesn't succeed at declaring me crazy, legally speaking, he will get in trouble. He could get in trouble with, I don't know, some forces that he may not be able to stop. Let's put it that way. So he's thinking on his own interest, not in the interest of the group. And that's the problem. That's the problem. Speaking about group dynamics versus individual interests, I have something to say, but I won't say it here to not change the subject, but I'll say it at the end of this demo. Okay, so that was the other observation, right? That the lawyer told her what to do. And the other thing that came from that conversation yesterday with my former partner was that she expressed frustration because I filed those documents, right? I filed a bunch of things on Sunday evening. I basically used the nuclear weapon. I made all these things become now part of the legal record. So she expressed frustration for that, right? My response was to tell her, look, I know you can't see it right now, but honestly, I did it in the most, trying to minimize the impact on you. And then she was like, no, I don't, she didn't believe what I was saying. And I said, look, listen, did you read the transcripts? Because if you read the transcripts, you will see that I don't even mention your name. I say my former partner, and every time I mention your name, I make sure that I say, I'm not accusing my former partner of anything consistently. And then her response was, no, I don't read the transcripts because I can't deal with that. I can't, it's too stressful, something like that. But this on itself, it's very important, I think. The reason I say this is because how can she make these important legal decisions, right? Whether to accept mediation or the note or without reading the documents. It's just, I think it makes it more obvious that the decisions are being made for her and she's just there. They make her sign things that she's not understanding. So I think they're taking advantage of her and they're getting her in trouble, right? Because she's signing all these things that she's not understanding. And she's responsible for whatever she signs, but she's not even reading the documents that I filed with the court. Which brings me to another point. Remember, at the beginning of the conversation with her yesterday, she expressed frustration because of what I filed. But then she tells me that she didn't read the transcripts. So seems to me like what's happening is that the lawyer is telling her the information filtered, right? Like the lawyer reads the transcripts and then she tells the client something and instructs her on what to do. It's just a situation that leads to manipulation. It's a crazy situation. Again, but on this part, I can't say anything because that's her choice, right? My former partner is choosing not to read the transcripts and to rely on what the lawyer is telling her and letting the lawyer make the decisions for her. If she's allowing all that to happen, right? There's nothing really I can do. It's not my place to do anything there. But it's just a sad situation, like seeing how they manipulate people. And regardless of whatever happened in the past, it's just, I feel sorry that she might get in trouble. They're just using her to sign things that she's not even understanding what they are. That was all that was obvious to me in that conversation yesterday. But I think the thing with most liability here is probably the fact that the mediator didn't convey the information during the mediation, which was his role. Besides all the things that I think it's even fraud. He defrauded me because he made me believe that he was mediating and he wasn't mediating anything. He was posing as a mediator, but he didn't mediate anything. And remember, he's a former judge. And this brings me to another point, which is, and here I want to be very careful because to be honest with you, like this person has power over me, right? This person has the legal power to declare me insane and to take my son away from me forever, right? So I'm scared by that, if I'm honest. So I'm going to be very careful here. But I have concerns about the judge. And let me tell you where my concerns originate. Okay. When all this happens, right, and they send me the process server to my house to harass me, 20 minutes after I started doing Google Maps API calls related to addresses related to Diosdado Cabello, 20 minutes later, Morgan Hibner sent me this man to harass me. This is documented in the website. And then in those documents that he served me, there was a citation, which is when I went to that audience to talk to the judge, okay? The judge ordered mediation, despite of the serious claims about my mental capacity, the order mediation. And then I go to this mediation, and the mediator, and he suggested the mediator, like the judge verbally suggested this specific mediator. He said, this person, he was a judge, I know him. And this mediator, David Perwin, he was a judge in the same family court, like in this same, I mean, it was a different number. This is 387, and I think he told me 505, I think, or 500, like something like that. But it is also in Fort Bend, also family court. So they're colleagues, or maybe David Perwin preceded, maybe they didn't collide in time, but they were working in the same thing. So this judge suggests the mediator, okay? And the mediator now I'm seeing that didn't even relay my message to the other party, okay? But beyond what the mediator did, because these are two separate individuals, right? I cannot extrapolate what the judge is saying and say that they're working together, okay? But the fact that the judge ordered the mediation and suggested this mediator is important and relevant. Also, at the end of this mediation on Friday, right? And this is recorded in the recording that it's on YouTube, posted publicly. He said, and I'm quoting him word by word, he said, it makes no logical or legal sense to proceed with mediation if your mental capacities have been called in question in a court of law, right? So I guess what I'm going with this is that from my position, right, from my shoes, I now have a legal opinion from an attorney who is registered with the Bar of Texas and was a family court judge for 8 years and was appointed by the governor and happened to work in the same district court as the judge that sent me to mediation, despite my mental abilities being questioned. So from my shoes, having this legal opinion from this very prominent lawyer, right? He gave me that opinion for free, but he gave it, right? In his official capacity as mediator. But his background is important to give weight to his opinion in light of this specific court, okay? Now, I feel like that judge could have seriously harmed me because he sent me to a mediation knowing that my mental capacity had been questioned. He sent me to a place to sign a contract when the other party, with the same people that were alleging that I'm crazy. If there's a way a judge could harm me, it's that. Right? There's no worse way to harm me than that. If I'm crazy, sending me to sign a contract with the people that are calling me crazy is the worst possible thing you can do to me as a judge, ordering me to go to mediation. So I feel now, putting aside what the mediator did, just putting that aside, I feel like the judge put me in a serious position of harm. And I have to ask myself if I should ask the judge to recuse himself. Because I'm afraid now that his decisions could further harm me. Not because I'm paranoid, but because this happened. The other thing that I think is important to mention is that after I go to mediation, then this thing happened with, I learned yesterday that the mediator didn't relay the message, right? I'm going to make a parallel here, but you know, this situation it feels very similar to me to something that happened in the past, where basically this, I'm going to say what the commonality is, right? That I go to a place. So the sequence is this: a situation gets induced in my life, and a situation that is a problem, and then I'm going to say what is the sequence that I see that is similar, and then I'm going to tell you what is the other situation. The sequence is a situation gets induced in my life that it's a painful situation. It's a problem that brought me to go talk to another person. That person, on their official capacity, acting completely within the boundaries of the law, refers me to another party that could cause me harm if the thing is not done correctly, given the situation that I already have. And that third party does harm me, seriously harms me. The parallel of this is Marjorie Broussard. So Marjorie Broussard took a CT scan of my full torso to help Diosdado Cabello and Vladimir Padrino Lopez measure where exactly was my spine injury. Then they created a series of situations that exploited that injury to cause me pain, unbearable pain. I go to Marjorie Broussard. Marjorie Broussard, instead of referring me to pain management, because I was crying, literally crying when I talked to her from the pain. She did not send me to a pain clinic. She sent me to physiotherapy. And the physiotherapist, she told me exactly what exercises I had to do and how to do them. And she supervised me doing the exercise. I had to go to the clinic to do exercises with her. And those exercises actually harmed me. And I lost the ability to walk after I did them for 4 weeks. So you see, the commonality I see in this is they induce a problem. I go talk to a person in an official capacity, a doctor, in the case of Marjorie. So in the case of Marjorie, the problem was the back pain. In the case of the judge, the problem is Marcelo is kidnapped with legal means, but kidnapped. Then in the case of the back pain, I go talk to Marjorie. In the case of the kidnapped child, I go talk to the judge. In the case of the back pain, Marjorie refers me to the physiotherapist. In the case of the judge, refers me to this mediation with David Perwin, previously appointed by Greg Abbott. And then in the case of the back pain, the physiotherapist helped me with exercises, and I lost the ability to walk for months, 3 months or something like that. And in the case of the judge, David Perwin manipulates the process, and he put me in a separate room where I cannot see what she's saying, she cannot see what I'm saying, and he decides for her. It's the same thing. So now I'm in a situation where I have this legal proceeding going with a judge that I honestly can't trust. And I'm scared because I feel like he has a lot of power over me. He has the power to declare me insane. So it's not an easy situation, really. Speaking of the judge, one thing I've noticed, I tried to find him in the index for his address. And I understand, right? Judges, because of their line of work, they don't put their addresses in the public. They obscure their addresses, right? Because somebody could get upset with their judgment and then try to harm them, right? I understand that. So I could not find the address, right? But one thing that caught my attention was that he went to Ohio State University and graduated around 1992. And this is relevant, or might be relevant, because James Casey, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, the chief data protection officer, like these people are unbelievable. So the chief data protection officer of Akamai actively participated in the Liana Technologies / Wikipedia / Akamai attacks against my company. So much so that I reported him to the IRS, and I also named him in the class action lawsuit I filed with the district court, Southern District of Texas, that I filed on May 19. And this class action lawsuit is included in the list of exhibits that I filed with the court on Sunday. I'm saying all this because Jim Casey went to law school at Ohio State, if I recall correctly. I don't have access to my data here, so I might be wrong, but if I recall correctly, he went to Ohio State, and I think he graduated, if not the same year, a year before, or a year after, or 2 years after. I can't recall exactly, but he went to the same law school. So they may know each other, right? So I don't know. That adds another concern. The person I'm suing in the district court as a major player in this, and who was the CEO, I think, of Newstar, major player on the fake news machine. And then he became the chief data protection officer, protection for them, of Akamai. And they went to the same law school, maybe even the same years. I don't know. It adds just more concern to the already concerning situation. So I don't know. This is one example. It's one of those cases in which The idea is not fully formed in my head, in my mind, and I just have to let it simmer. Side note, Morgan Heibner filed yesterday a motion. I haven't read the motion, to be honest, because again, like I have all these questions on my mind. I don't want to add another thing. I'll read it today. I imagine I have some reasonable time to respond to this. But what was interesting, right, was the timing. So I filed those documents with the court in which she's named in the IRS form and mentioned in the cluster of kidnappers. And when I called my former partner yesterday, that was like 11 a.m. And she was like, "Oh, I'm driving." And oh, what are you up to? And she said, "No, I'm coming back from the lawyer's office because I had to sign an affidavit." But this was interesting to me, right? And then 2 hours later, Morgan Hibner filed this motion that I haven't read, right? It was filed at 3 p.m. yesterday. But what was interesting to me was the response time. I filed those documents, I think it was like 5 p.m. Sunday or 6 p.m. And say in 14 hours, 16 hours, my former partner was already in the law office signing something. And supposedly, this is a low-level, simple separation case in a small rural town in Texas. I've talked to lawyers before. For example, Mark Sirek, right? He has a busy practice. If I email him, he would reply 2 days later, right? And we never met person before the mediation. And he made like $50,000 or $40,000 on his contingency fee from that case. It was a higher profile case than this. And his response time was 2 days, 3 days over email. But in this case, I filed something on a Sunday evening. And at 9 a.m. on Monday, my former partner is at Morgan Hibner's. So it feels like she's getting like a VIP treatment, right? She must be the most important client of this law firm for this very low level, simple separation, supposedly, right? Separation case. It's not a smoking gun, but I think it shows like that the law firm is in it, right? Like they're acting on their own interest, not on the interest of their client, nor on the interest of the child. This is their own interest, right? And Diosdado Cabello's interest. That's why the response time is so fast. Okay. So I think I'm going to almost close on the legal topics. With that, there's one more thing. There is a lawyer and a judge that has been flagged by the pipeline for, I don't know, say 6 months, 7 months, like a lot of signals. I'm not going to go into much detail. Her name is Lina Hidalgo, okay? Here in Fort Bend County. Super flag, a lot of signals, a lot of data. I'll pass the information directly to the FBI. I won't say any details to anybody but the FBI in person, okay? Because she's a judge, right? And I know what judges can do. Okay, so now I'm gonna go quickly through a list of entities that have been flagged before. I've been trying to, or thinking of mentioning them, and I've mentioned them in other ways. I created videos, but I wanted to do it verbally with my voice, showing my face, not on a website with written, because it's important, right? So one is Jose Alberto Inciarte. He's co-clustered with Hidalgo Martinez, and they were like the version alpha 0.1, right, of all this back in 2005 when Piero Midyar tried to steal what I was doing the first time, which he then stole. But that opportunity he used Jose Alberto Inciarte and Hidalgo Martinez. I believe Hidalgo Martinez here in Katy. Jim Donovan from Goldman Sachs. Documented in the website, also there is a video about him. He's basically a power broker. He's the juncture point between Goldman Sachs and Washington politics. The founder of Oracle, Larry Ellison, also super flagged. Mark Cuban, the Shark Tank entrepreneur, super flagged as well. Ken Paxton, Attorney General Ken Paxton, I filed like 3 different complaints. My son wouldn't be kidnapped today if he had done his job. That's not the reason why he's flagged. He's been flagged even before Marcelo was kidnapped for multiple reasons, right? Google's Artemis team. So Artemis is an interesting thing because it's a project I created at Google in 2016 to fix the many issues that happen because of this bad design of making local use the web index. And I talked about this a little bit when I did demo about the NAF boost and the local web team. that design really doesn't make sense. And it created a bunch of problems, and Artemis fixed a small subset of those problems. So after Travis Kalanick moved me to Goldman Sachs, transferred me basically to Goldman Sachs, they created at Google a team for Artemis to take over this project that I created, that I was maintaining alone. They created a full team in Boston to maintain this thing. Of course, to get the code and all the design documents in an organic way, right? And then, like in 2021, that team tried to recruit me, and they created a series of interviews and extracted the information from me about Artemis and about other things that I was working on after I left Google. And they, of course, never gave me a job offer, right? Because the objective wasn't to bring me back to Google. The objective was to get this information on the things that they couldn't understand how I did them. So all of them are flagged, the members of the Artemis team. Okay. Also, I want to mention the names of the people that are in the medical cluster. So the medical cluster is a set of doctors that have provided medical care to me in one way or another. And all of them, as it turns out, after I captured Elon Musk's geo index, all of them are marked in the index and are part of this network. So basically, my healthcare over the last, I don't know, at least 12, 13 years was provided by eBay. That's what it means. By agents working for eBay to harm me, right? So I could not compete with eBay. And I kind of sort them in a way that I think makes sense liability-wise for Diosdado Cabello. So I think that the top one would be Dr. Tang, who reconstructed my nose. And this was a ruse. I'm just going to give a little bit of information. Penelope Suarez and some other people, all at the same time, people that supposedly didn't know each other, started telling me that it was hard to understand what I was saying because my nose was like blocked. And they made me believe this, that I had a serious, and maybe I had it, I don't know. But if you hear this same thing from 5 different people at the same, around the same time, right, in different situations, people that don't know each other, you think I have a serious problem, right? So anyhow, I went and looked in Google, and this suggestion came up at the top. And I went there, and he operated on me and reconstructed my nose. It was a super painful operation. And I have a lot of data about what happened in that operation, but I'm going to only give that to the FBI. But he's probably the one that carries the most liability, and he's Chinese, right? So that could connect all these to the Chinese intelligence service. I think the second one would be Marjorie Broussard because of the spine, targeting my spine to harm me. Then Marifer Oropesa because she was inserted as a caregiver for my son. Then Cara Chaney Carter because she harmed Marcelo with a vaccine. I think it was Baxellis or Barcellis. The exact name is documented in the website. That's the name of the vaccine she used to harm him. Then we have Dr. Vitenas. He's a plastic surgeon here in Houston, super flag and serious liability. Then we have Dr. Matthew James Isom. He was the OBYN that my former partner retained while she was expecting Marcelo. Imagine that. Lorena Conde, she helped me with medication. The Psy Clinic, Dr. M. Lin Tao, and this is related to the prescription RX5590 filled by Ann Lopez Miranda Beatriz, MD, and that's the person that did the CT scan of my spine that was then used to harm me. I think she had the least liability because she only did the CT scan, but I don't know what level of involvement she had, but she's flagged, like she's marked in the end. Okay, that's that. And then I want to talk about a person called Wayne Bailey. It's spelled Wayne, and the last name is Bailey. So this was a ruse that they did where Max Tarasuk was trying to steal the technology. He was posing as a salesman working for me if he was an agent. And then he started sending me these emails, right, like implying that he had intellectual property ownership of the company. Like the thing that they do, like the same thing they did with Hidalgo Martinez and Jose Alberto Inciarte, the same thing, right? The same thing, but 20 years later. And this one is important because so after the thing with Max happened, I tried to retain a lawyer, but my means were very limited. I could not go and spend $20,000 on a corporate law firm to fight with Max. That would also harm me. So what I did, there was a website. It's a website where lawyers and attorneys can freelance by the hour, right? and I can't recall the name of the website. I have to look it up. But anyhow, I found him there, and he's in Texas, so he's registered with the bar, and he was also a judge. So he's a former judge. Okay? And I asked him if he would help me with this situation, and he said, "Yes, I'll help you." And he charged me like it was ridiculously low, like $100. It was like 150, but of course I understand it was just so I retained him. Anyhow, he helped me, but I think the liability is high because he's a lawyer, former judge, and also because he used. So during this process, right, I asked him because naively and all those thought. Imagine I think about these things that I did, and I laugh because I was so naive. So at that time, I thought that to scare Max off, to make him to back off, I could. My idea was that I could create a situation in which it would look like Wayne Bailey was an in-house counsel, like I had retained a full-time lawyer, right? Hire a lawyer for my firm, for my company, to fight Max, right? So he would back off. Of course, I'm laughing because with the level of surveillance, they have my house wired, right? Like they know that and they send this is an agent. Like they know that I only pay $100 for this, right? So Max would never be scared by that, right? With the amount of intelligence they had. But anyhow, I asked Wayne Bailey if he would work by the hour as an in-house counsel. And he said yes, for $100 an hour only when needed, something ridiculously low like that. And so I gave him an email address, access to the email address of the company. He got access to it being inside of the domain, which is you can see the contact list. You can see there's a lot of things you can see when you have an email address on the same domain of the company. So he got that, and which I think was at the end the goal. But anyhow, because he's a judge and he's registered with the bar, I imagine the liability for industrial espionage is probably higher. If you think about the spectrum of liability for industrial espionage, the liability has to be the highest for somebody who was a judge and knows the law and is a licensed attorney. Not the highest. Probably Robert Gates, right, would be worse because he was Minister of Defense. Yeah, this is pretty close. And no, it's in terms of like how absurd the violation is. Okay, so that's that. Okay, so now the next thing I want to talk about to close this segment is the following. About that hypothetical game we played on Friday. I call it Human Systems TM, and I made a TV commercial for it. It's posted on the channel. I've been watching it a few times, trying to see how a person that is not familiar with the space, because I have to tell you, I've been working on like the company, the technology that they stole the last time is key opinion leaders. It's a technology to rank influence, right? So I've been working on this problem of influence for years, right? Many years, more than 5 years. So I'm saying that to say that this is a problem that I'm familiar with, right? This problem of how to influence human systems, right? That's my area of research in a way, right? Ironically. So anyhow, I was thinking, how would a person not familiar with that area of research would perceive this video? What would they get from it? And I think I saw a flaw in my delivery of Friday, which is, I think I did a good job at making the concept understandable for a wide audience, which was my goal. But I think what I did not really hit was the question of, okay, but why would anybody target me? Not me, Reynaldo, but like the viewer, right? If somebody watches that video, they could ask themselves, this is pretty interesting. Nobody's going to target me because I'm just a regular guy, right? I'm a regular girl doing something that is not world changing. This is a problem for the people in the 2%. The people that they're targeting are the people that could make a difference because they are inventing something or because they have control over an important system or because they have an idea, technology that they want to steal. So a person that doesn't see themselves as doing something worth stealing may think, oh, this is not a problem for me. But that's not true. That's what I want to clarify. Because this is the game I proposed is accurate, but we can build on that game. Okay, now let's play a different game. Yeah, so this game is called Society. Okay, and we can make it this way. So in this game, each player is given 2% as a quota, right? So you can pick 2% of the people in any of the systems involved. So the scenario now involves multiple sub-scenarios. When we played on Friday, it was one scenario that was a school, right? And then I expanded to the school system composed by multiple schools to show that you can build on this effect. But in this game, now you have multiple scenarios on the scenario, okay? And your goal is to gain control of the entire society, of that small society, okay? And so, for example, let's say that the society is all the educational systems in your city. And by educational systems, pre-K, primary school, high school, college, right? So your goal is to control all of that, right? And you're given 2% of the population. So let's restrict it to 4 sub scenarios, okay? Pre-K, primary school, high school, college. And you're given 4 teachers. So that's what you can play with. You have 4 teachers, and then you have the ability to pick 2% of the total population across those systems. And also external systems. Like, for example, although we're playing with the school entities, maybe you can pick a police officer or a judge or a mediator, okay? Which are not part of the system, that they're external, but you can pick them in the extended society and use them if you need to, okay? So you see, you get 4 teachers. So the first question is, okay, how do you allocate your 4 teachers? You can plant 1 teacher in one of the subsystems, in each one, right? So you can put 1 teacher in the pre-K, you can put 1 teacher in the primary school, you can put 1 teacher in the high school, and you can put 1 teacher in the most prominent college in that area, in your city, okay? So you have these 4 plants, and you have 2% of the population that you can control, right? And then, because this session is already pretty long, let's not play the game, but I'm gonna explain why this is relevant, right? The way they do it, the way you would gain control at the end, there's 2 ways, right? One is you can buy placement, meaning you create the school. You have so much money that you build the school, and then you name the principal, right? And then you got it. You have control of the school, because after you have the principal, you can name anybody you want, or the owner of the school, right? If it's a private school. But the other way, which is the more relevant to this conversation, is that you have to promote these plants that you have in a way that looks organic, okay? The way it would play out is that you would you would make your pick, and you have to make your picks based on that. Your end goal is that you want to promote these 4 plants to, at the end, be the directors or the principals or the top highest ranking position of all these 4 institutions. Once you have gained the control, you have placed these 4 plants at the top of the 4 institutions, you won the game, because then you have full control, okay? But to make this happen, these people have to progress in their careers in a way that looks organic and be promoted and eventually get to those positions of power, right? How do you do that? By employing the 2% of the population that you have to harass anybody that can compete with your plans, right? The pre-K, you have a teacher there. If there's a teacher that, it's a good teacher and kids love the teacher and parents love the teacher, you have to harass that teacher, because that teacher potentially could achieve the promotion. And you don't want that, because you want your plan to achieve that promotion. The same with the primary school, right? Anybody that competes with your person, with your plant in that system, you have to harass them, right? With PE sexual harassment suit, and with the legal kidnapping of the child, and tampering with their medication, depressing them, whatever it takes. But nobody can compete with your people, right? So that's why this is relevant to everybody, because it doesn't matter if you are working on a life-changing technology or a world-changing technology or not. If you happen to be in a position or in a system where that they want to take control, and you are doing a good job, they will harass you, because otherwise the plant will not get promoted. The reason why the plant will not get promoted, and I'm not saying may not, I'm saying will not, because the plant has no real skills. The plant is a spy. He's not a teacher, really, or he or her. It's a plant. Their job, their skill is to spy, is not to instruct the students. So they lack the skill and they will never get promoted organically. The only way they get promoted is by eliminating the competition. And this brings me to the more subtle point of all this. The more subtle point of the attack, of this 2% attack against society, is that not only they're planting their people in the positions of power, right? And that they're destroying startups and stealing the source code, but it's also that they're replacing the real 2% of that society by a fake 2%. I think that's the nuclear bomb. Let me, and I don't mean to sound condescending, but that thing that I said is a very deep concept, okay? It's very deep. At least to me, right? The first time I thought about this problem, maybe a couple of years ago, about this thing that I just said, it took me like a week to really see it, right? To fully digest it in a way. It's a very deep implication. What I'm saying is this, and I know that maybe some people will watch this video, right? And I don't mean to say that there's people that are more worthy than others. And so I'm not saying that, okay? I'm just saying that different peoples, and this not only in people, like even if you look at cattle or if you look at dogs, or animals, anything, right? In any group of living beings, there's different behavior, right? And different goals and different drives and different personalities. And in society, in human society, if you think about technological advancements, it seems like when you look in the past, right, and you look at the number of individuals that have made those achievements that propel society forward in a big way, it's always a very reduced number of individuals. It's not because they're smarter, it's because of different situations, right, that collided and created those accidents. Those are really outliers, okay? But that number is small, and that number is about 1%, maybe 2% of the population. Okay, so and within that set of people, there's also another distribution hidden, another bell curve hidden there. That 2% do not contribute equally. Like within that 2%, there is another 2% that, you know, are the people that invented space travel, the people that discovered nuclear power, right? The people that invented the steam power, right? That is the 2% of the 2%. But what I'm saying is, because of this 2% attack and the Aguiar theorem, really, what they're doing really at the same time that they steal the ideas of the people, right? Because they're harassing anybody that could compete with their plans. So only their plans get promoted. What is happening in reality is that not only they steal the technology, but they completely, how do I say this? They completely bury this person in a way that they cannot really contribute in any meaningful way. And then basically they replace what the position that the person would have taken in society by a plant that has no skills in American society in this case. I think that technique of stealing things that way and harassing anybody that can compete with their synthetic 2%, the nuclear weapon there is that they're replacing people that could have contributed to society, bury them, by attacking them, making them sick, depressing them, like whatever, right? Kidnapping their sons or daughters. And then they replace them, they take the technology and give it to Elon Musk or to Travis Kalanick, people that are not really adding any value. If you look at it objectively, what is the value, right? So I think that's the deeper, the more subtle, but more damaging attack, because it's a long-term damage to society. And at the same time, they're flooding our societies with drugs provided by Diosdado Cabello and creating inflation in other ways. Inflation. I'm going to say this, it's probably off topic, but I'm going to say it because I've been meaning to say it for a long time. And now always something comes up and I don't say it. So there's one of the distributed 2% attacks that they do is against oil prices, okay? And this is documented in the website. I got data for this. So what they seem to be doing is that they inflate the price. So they control a series of gas stations, right? The Shell gas stations are a notable one. The Bucky's gas stations. And I have recordings of those gas stations where they're doing this, right? So they inflate the price of the gas station. So it's a scheme that they have. They inflate the prices of the gas in those gas stations at specific hours, right? To avoid things like outages and things like that. Inflate the prices, and then they send thousands of people at the same time to fill the tanks, right? And they do this across the nation in thousands of gas stations. And remember, like they have 2% of the population, right? We're talking about millions of vehicles here. So this way, they concentrate the purchases of gas at the same time. So basically, they're creating artificial pressure on the oil market this way. And because of that, there's an immediate reaction on the market and the price goes up, right? So that's half of the scheme. The other half is that these countries that conform this network, Venezuela, Russia, Iran, control the majority of the production of oil, right? And they have this OPEC cartel. I don't know, OPEC is called in Spanish. I don't know. I think the name in English is different. They're organization of countries that produce oil, OPEC plus. I don't know what it's called these days. It's a cartel, basically. They control supply. So what they do is that, and also they have people inside of the strategic reserves of the US, the entity that controls the strategic reserves of oil of the country. So with the information they can gather from the strategic reserves, they decide when to press the market, and at the same time, with the OPEC, they lower the supply. And that way they artificially keep the oil prices up. It's a financial crime of planetary scale. And they're doing this on American soil using gas stations that they own as a network, right? So but it's one good example of the 2% attack. How a group of individuals, because they're coordinated, they can exercise pressure on things at the same time, and it has an effect. It has a tremendous effect. It is disproportionate effect. But to close this with this example of the inflation and what I was talking before about the game society, I think that the big takeaway here is that in everything that they do, they're thinking as a group. Like, for example, when we're talking about a low-level school in a town, right, and they have a plant in there for some reason, because maybe somebody important is going to have a child next year. I don't know, right? And so they plant somebody in the pre-K, so it gets promoted to that in that school in 3 years, and collides in time when with this child that is not yet born is going to go to pre-K, right? So you see, they will start harassing all the teachers in that pre-K, so they quit or whatever, and this one becomes the most senior teacher and becomes the principal in 3 years, right? But you see the thinking, right? That the Chinese and the Venezuelans, like this coalition of countries, will harass these teachers that really have done nothing to anybody and are not really working on anything groundbreaking, but they will harass them because they are seeing that in 3 years, that position of principal in that pre-K is going to be fundamental, right? So what I'm saying is that they're thinking as a group and they're acting as a group, right? But the rest of us are thinking individually. Like the other 98% of the population, we are all thinking individually about our own needs, our own wants. And I think that's the deepest, that's the deeper thing, right? I guess what I'm trying to say is that we also have to change, right? The other 98% also has to change. It's not only shooting down the satellites. It's not only disassembling the network. Their success is that they managed to align 2% of the population of the world using illegal means, using crypto payments and evading taxes. Yes, it's illegal, but they did it. They aligned 2% of the population, while the rest of us, we are not united. That's why they use the name marker United, because that's their, how do you say that in English? The coup d'armes in French. That's the, I don't know what it, like their shield, like their symbol. When you see an institution that have a, I don't know how to translate that, a coup d'armes, the union, the unity, that's their standard. That's what defines them. And that's what makes them strong. But the rest of us, we are all thinking individually. and it's all everybody for themselves, and that makes us weak. I don't know. Long way of saying that I think, yes, the world needs to disarm this thing, but we also have to change, obviously, because otherwise we're weak, and this will happen again. I think I'm going to cut it here. Thank you so much for your time, and see you the next one.